Good morning, people, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Tuesday, the 10th of September. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning for the first time this week by Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
I'm good. I can only hear you somewhat, so I hope you'll be clear of the rest of the podcast. But apart from that, I'm good. We obviously have had it's been a kind of busy week, hasn't it? Yeah, Rangers-wise, despite the fact there's been an international break. So, yeah, looking forward to getting into it as ever.
Yeah, always plenty to discuss despite the lack of action. And we'll start off with a piece that you've a long read piece over on the website this morning, folks. The link is in the description below this video. Fantastic reads on deadline day signing. Naresho Kasanwirjo, of course, he was an unused substitute in the recent Old Firm defeat. He has been brought on loan for the season from Feyenoord. Pretty versatile player. And you've spoke to some of his former coaches, Joshua. What can we expect basically from this guy? Brought on, as we mentioned, on loan, recorded a video on deadline day with our favourite Feyenoord podcaster, Johan Brinkel. And he was quite surprised at the move, he had to admit. He spent last season on loan, of course, at Rapid Vienna. Now at Rangers, what we getting?
Yeah, obviously, I think the link's in the description. People can read it if they want. It gives hopefully a little bit more. We'll have one with Bijrami as well at some point. It gives a little bit more context, hopefully, as to the backstory of a player that Rangers signed. Nana obviously came through at Ajax, then went to Groningen. It was signed by Feyenoord last January 2023, before he went on loan to Austria last season. So a few interesting details in there, one of which speaking about why Feyenoord wanted to take him to the club in the first place in 2023. The conversations that took place between the clubs then. Arne Slot was then the Feyenoord manager. Nana, I guess, is quite an interesting profile, and this is what Philippe Clement brought up as well, and that he is versatile. And I don't know about you, but I tend to think in the past, versatile, Derek, has been a buzzword for not good enough to hold down any one given position. Yes. And maybe there's an element of truth in that, that he's coming at 22, hasn't quite been able to break into the Feyenoord team. Had a good spell at Groningen as a centre-back. Feyenoord tried to convert him into more of a right-back, and that's where he played in Austria as well. Obviously coming through the Ajax Academy, his whole kind of youth footballing career, he was used to having the ball and dictating games with the ball at his feet. So he's someone who's, having watched a little bit of him as well, really comfortable with the ball at his feet. But the key question, he takes risks as well, which obviously will have its positives and negatives. But I think the most interesting point for me is that versatility. Can Rangers use it as a strength? Can he be a versatile player who, someone like Chefty or Dujon Sterling, they're also versatile players. They can play in different positions. But rather than that being a negative, it's because they've got quite a lot of attributes, but they're also comfortable, receiving the ball in different areas of the pitch and not just carrying out one function. And if you look at the type of players that Rangers are trying to sign, they need more of these type of players who are comfortable in different areas of the pitch doing different things. So where he plays exactly remains to be seen, because one of the coaches I spoke to compared the partnership that, you'll have to remind me the guy's name, who Robin Proper played with at centre half at FC20, who was linked to Rangers. Mies Helgers, I think his name is, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. He's obviously a young defender, 23 years old, a little bit quicker than Robin Proper. I think you've seen with Proper, as we've discussed, he's comfortable coming out the back forward to try and defend the space ahead of him, but maybe needs a bit of pace next to him. So what one of the coaches said, maybe that's a role that Nana could fulfill. He could benefit from playing next to someone like Robin Proper. He's played at centre half for Groningen in the Eredivisie. And then there's the other point of view of, okay, well, he's fulfilled a number of different roles. Could he be a more natural fullback who inverts inside the pitch? We saw the game against Ross County, just how narrow, I know we're going to come on to speak about James Tavernier, how narrow he was in front of the defence, but he's not really used to getting the ball in there. So he gives Rangers a lot of options. He's not coming just to sit on the bench if you look at the stage of his career. And also you can say that this was a transfer priority for Rangers. It's a move that materialised late in the window, one that obviously only got over the line on transfer deadline day. But they need the versatility of that profile. If you look at how light they are at the number 6 position, where Dujon Sterling might have to play quite a lot this season. If you look at right back, if you look at centre back, so Nana's capable across all those 3 positions. But I think that the key, and this hopefully comes through in the piece a little bit as well, is he needs those consistent games because of where he is in his career. He's 22 years old, contracted until 2027 at Feyenoord. And obviously there'll be a lot to prove when a loan player arrives at Rangers and arrives on deadline day. But yeah, interested to see what he can do, and hopefully the piece gives a little bit more context as to that.
Yeah, I hope he scores a number of goals in Rangers, and my good friend Michael Smith has the Rihanna tune already set up for when he scores, and let's hope he scores a number of goals. I can see that getting belted out at Ibrox. He spoke to, like you said, some of the coaches he's worked with, an absolute legend, one of them, Michael Reisiger. He knows a thing or two about right backs. Absolutely loved him as a player during his time in the 90s and in the noughties as well. Do you think, as the comment comes in here from Dave Fulton, he says, is he predominantly a centre-back or a full-back, or is he just as comfortable as either? Where do you think he'll play, Joshua?
I think that depends a lot on what happens elsewhere, and obviously, Tavernier is still the topic of conversation until the transfer window in Turkey closes. I know we'll come on to that, Derek, so I won't steal your script, but it depends a lot on what happens elsewhere. But similarly to Dujon Sterling, he obviously played at Groningen Nana predominantly as a centre back, and a lot in his youth career he played in a lot of different positions. And I think there is an element to that whereby you probably want your fullback now, like Clement probably wants his fullbacks to be able to not just do one thing. We're used to Rangers fullbacks in the past providing the web going up and down the pitch, whereas now they should. I think you see that with Chefty. They should be able to get the ball deep and progressive forward, attack in the final third, move inside the pitch at different points. So to answer Dave's question, I think in the last couple of years he's become more of a right back. That's what Feyenoord have tried to convert him into. He was obviously kind of behind Gertruida, who went to Leipzig at the end of the most recent transfer window, in that kind of right back slot at points. And very much has filled in a lot of different areas. But I think if you look at his career path over the last 3 years in particular, Feyenoord signed him as a centre-back. There's been more of an intentional plan, I think, it looks like, to use him as a right-back and a left-back. And you look at that all around football, look at Arsenal, who Ben White and Calafiori, predominantly centre-backs who've become their right-back and left-back. That's pretty consistent in keeping with what you're seeing elsewhere in football. But the important thing is, from a Rangers point of view, they probably don't have any set position where they think, okay, this is totally it at the moment. This is totally secure. Does Proper need some pace to him, pace next to him? Maybe. Does there need to be a solution in certain games at right back? Yes, maybe as well. But then what is the best position for Dujon Sterling's development? Because I thought he struggled a little bit in central midfield in that most recent Old Firm game, even though he's done well there in the past. So I think it's dependent. But if you look at the last 3 years of his career, it's been more as a centre back before then moving to predominantly play as a right back.
Yeah, who knows where he's going to play, but like you say, Joshua, he has came to play. I don't think Feyenoord, well, I'm not sure if they would have allowed him to go to a club if he wasn't guaranteed a set experience at first team level. And I'll be pushing for a start. Whether he starts at Tannadice, who knows? But of course, a lot of noise, as there has been, pretty much ramped up after the Parkhead defeat on the future of James Tavernier. Yesterday, over the weekend, there was murmurings that a few clubs in Turkey, some clubs over in the Middle East, also keen on the Rangers captain. A Turkish publication yesterday by the name of, and I'll probably butcher this name, Orta Sigski, said I had a story on James Tavernier. I've translated it, so it will be maybe not be as 100% accurate, but the headline is Besiktas is counting down for James Tavernier transfer. In it says Besiktas' technical director, Giovanni van Bronckhorst, wants to see his former student Tavernier in his squad once again, while the Dutch coach gave a positive report to the management. Besiktas officials also increased their contacts with his agent for the football player's cost. Tavernier has a contract with Rangers that continues until 2026. This hasn't gone away, these reports, Joshua, and of course it's probably an easy link, Besiktas, given Gio is the current manager there. I was surprised to see Tavernier, I've got to say, but when I pitched up at St Andrews for the pre-season match, I was surprised to see Tavernier start that game. He was off the pace, and he's been off the pace so far this season. I was expecting both he and Goldson to have departed Rangers before now. We know that Goldson has left. Tavernier is still here. But there is a lot of noise regarding his future. Is now the time, do you reckon, for a parting of the ways?
Yeah, there is a lot of noise, and I think the Turkish transfer window is open until Friday.
Next week, I think.
Was it? I thought it was the 13th. Yeah. Okay, well, the other context.
The 13th. Yeah, I was saying next week. Yeah, the 13th. You're right. Yeah,
making me doubt myself. The other context, the other context needed to the conversation about Besiktas is I believe that they might need to before they bring in, if they were to bring in other players from overseas, they might need to clear a couple of those kind of overseas spaces in their squad. If you look at the makeup of their squad at the moment, but you're right, it's one that's not going away, and obviously it's quite an easy link to make because of Gio and Tav and the fact that especially in Europe they had a pretty successful relationship. You've got to go back to the start with this, don't you? And this summer has clearly been different in James Tavernier's Rangers' career up until now. Up until now, the thought of entertaining an offer for him has largely been pushed away. For example, if you take it back to the summer of 2023, Michael Beale had been asked, does James Tavernier have a price? Could he be sold? Which is in effect the question that Clement was asked a lot of times over summer, Derek, in a lot of different ways. Beale would not have answered that in the same way because I imagine because he was a central figure to that squad, and very much that continued under Beale as it had been the case under Gio and Gerrard before him. Clement has been slightly different since the summer, hasn't it? And that's testament to the overall feel of the club. That's testament of the overall feel of the need for change to happen because it's been overdue in a lot of areas. And I think there is a conversation to have about why Rangers players can't seem to end well because there's not been many, maybe spare, I don't know, Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo over recent years who've ended on a high or ended in a good place compared to previous heights. If there was a right offer this summer, and obviously there was an offer for Turkey from Turkey and Trabzonspor that was turned down, then Rangers were willing to talk to other clubs. That is no secret. Now you're in a slightly different situation because the transfer window has closed. Now, Clement, and this shouldn't go under the radar, Clement did say that Rangers would look in the free agent market, specifically talking about the number 6 position. There's a knock-on effect there when we're talking about where Nana plays, where Dujon Sterling plays, and the cover that Rangers have in the centre of the pitch and at right back as well. So it's not going to go away until the transfer window closes. In Turkey, Derek, you'd maybe be surprised if this materialises in the next 3 to 4 days and gathers pace. It would certainly be dependent on someone coming the other way. But overall, you've got to say that this summer, you're right, people were surprised when Tavernier came back into the squad because that offer was so public and because that hasn't happened before, because of the noises that had been made by everyone, including Clement, effectively saying that everyone has a price. And when you say your captain has a price and when it's honest and he obviously was kind of trying to lay his cards on the table, but then it also creates this doubt that I think you've seen with him and his future over the course of the summer, which materialises in the frustration that you're now seeing after another Old Firm defeat. But yeah, again, that interesting angle I think is worth talking about. Why can't Rangers players seem to end well? Why is this succession planning not worked? And a lot of that for me comes down to squad building.
Yeah, I mean, it's a player trading model, isn't it? You need to sell players on at their max value at that given point. Clement's touched on this in press conferences before. We can't have so many players like that summer gone to leave Rangers for nothing. And that has to be sorted out. James Tavernier, for me, like you say, there's a question that came in there from Andy. He says, how much will we realistically get for Tav if he is to go? No idea, in all honesty, what his valuation is, Joshua. On current form, I wouldn't be asking a lot for him. He's not playing anywhere near good enough, which is why I said on the Q&A yesterday that I think it's a big decision for the manager. At Tannadice, do I see him dropping the captain? No. Would I if I was a manager? Yes. But that's another. That's why he's paid the money to manage Rangers and not me.
Yeah, but I think it's important to stress at the moment that a lot of reports can come out linking players to Turkey, and there's not been, as far as we're aware, an official bid, an official approach to Rangers ahead of these kind of final few days of the window. But I guess the dubiety in the conversation, Derek, comes back to the fact that the noises that have been there all summer, the fact that there's been this public bid, the fact that Clement hasn't really shut that down. Also, now he has maybe laterally in August said he expects him to have a really good season and et cetera, et cetera. The difficulty for me is that you see, if Tavernier wasn't the captain, you could rotate him a little bit more. There's no point in denying that he does have difficulties in Old Firm games. You can't. Now, I don't think that's like always been the case, but I think he's had good performances in Old Firm games as well, obviously, and I think he's actually had good defensive performance at points. That's not been the case over the last year. And when Rangers have not, it's only natural that when Rangers have not won a big Old Firm game in 3 years, they've not won a big Old Firm game in the league since that Helander header. There's if you've been the captain through that, even if at points you've been let down by, say, other players, you've been let down by the fact that from Tavernier's point of view, he's played so many games when so many players haven't. He's taken a lot of responsibility. I think that topic of squad planning, like Alan McGregor, who probably played on a little bit too long, you'd say, based on his form, like Morelos and Kent, who didn't leave anywhere near their heights and kind of left in a much worse place than the heights of the Rangers' career, and obviously left for free. There has to be responsibility as well as to how it has got to this from a player who was, a couple of years ago at the peak of their career, but has equally played so many games. I think someone like Tavernier's had to carry a lot, but equally is not. He shouldn't be void of blame, and that's the important part. When you have been the captain through all these Old Firm games, that there is going to be a natural association, and that's why I think, Derek, if he wasn't the captain, then you could see a situation whereby you say, right, okay, we're going to put Nana or Dujon Sterling in at right back in these Old Firm games. Tavernier's going to start 25, 30 games over the course of the season. Now, maybe that's difficult given his position in the squad as an earner to only play a certain amount of matches. But I think if he was playing less games, it was only in March under Clement that he was in really good form offensively. If you think of the Ross County game where he got 3 assists, then you maybe rotate him a little bit more. Then he's a little bit fresher. I think what is clear is that it can't continue in the way that it is, because I don't see how Rangers overturn it from an Old Firm point of view, and that's the only way they're going to get back to where they need to get back to. Does that make sense?
Well, the manager said himself in Holland when he spoke to Chris that he can't play the amount of games that he's played in recent years, and he would rotate him. But at this moment in time, he's played every game, so something's got to happen. Something.
But the knock-on effect, and this is why I think one of the areas of criticism for this transfer window. Now, we don't know. How successful Chefty or Oscar Cortez plays, I guess, will be long term, right? So it's same goes for, I don't know, someone like Cherney over the course of the season, Robin Proper. Rangers are really light in the middle of the pitch, really, really light, and you're putting a lot of trust in Connor Barron to be your number 6. Now, Clement was asked about this, and he said Sterling can play there, Raskin can play there. Sterling can play there, and he can play in a lot of positions. I think he's in this situation now where he needs to play it. Versatility is good, but you also don't want to be changing about so much. You don't want to be moved about so much that it impacts you and hinders your development. And I think in certain games, central midfield can really suit Sterling well, but in certain games, I think being a right back would suit him better. So you're really light in that number 6 position, and part of that, yes, is an inability and a frustration at not being able to move certain players on. But again, that comes into this conversation because hypothetically, let's say Tavernier were to go and Dujon Sterling were to be your right back for the remainder of the season, you're now looking really light in the middle of the pitch. And Sterling himself has had a lot of injury issues, hasn't he? He's not been able to play really consistently. That's still an area which he's kind of working to improve. So the number 6 position, I think, coming out of the transfer window is the big glaring issue for Rangers that they need to answer over the course of the season. Even Raskin, he's not really played as a number 6 for Clement, and as we've discussed on the show before, he's more of a ball carrier than a passer, isn't he? And there's a reason I think that Clement hasn't favoured him in that position. As much as I think he's got a lot to offer as a player, and I like him as a player, he still has that injury caveat at the moment, though, doesn't he? So a lot of questions and a lot of knock-on effects, I think, to this conversation.
Well, just off the back of that, I got an interesting email from Jamie over the weekend from a fan of the show. He says, was at the Scotland-Spain under-21 match. Thought Leon King did well playing in the deep lying midfield spot against a very good team. The winning goal only came after the lad had been taking off. And he says that given the Rangers are crying out for someone to play that very role, should he come into the reckoning? Is Clement even aware another manager is picking his player to play in his own problem position? He hasn't really got a look in under Clement, Joshua. He was thrust in under Gio, remember the Champions League match, because of another shock horror injury crisis that Rangers had suffered. Hasn't really been seen since under both Michael Beale or Philip Clement. But he has been playing, of course, internationally for Scotland under 21s. Should he be looking at, should Leon King be an option in the middle of the park there? Or, can you see him staking a claim perhaps?
Again, I think this is this conversation shows the problem, right? Because how many youth players, think how many changes Rangers have had at management level, just from the football team, academy level. Obviously, they're still without an official head of academy at the moment. They've not made any announcement publicly on that. So the style of play which has changed so consistently, the recruitment, who has been in charge of recruitment, and the structure around the recruitment which has changed so much. Is there any wonder that then young players haven't been able to make that jump into the first team? Now, you can criticise individual quality. You can say, as Leon King, as Alex Lowry, are these players good enough to make it into the first team at Rangers? But when there's so much change around them, I think it makes it so difficult as well, because you need a pathway, you need a plan, a development plan over a number of years to make that work. And that ties into, okay, we're not going to sign this number 10 this year because we have this young player, Lowry, who's going to play this number of minutes in this position. Look at Leon King, who had he played the most minutes of any under 21-year-old or whatever it was in the Champions League in that really difficult campaign for Rangers. Was really trusted by Van Bronckhorst, played away at Liverpool, didn't he, in a back three at Anfield. Obviously was thrust into probably unfair situations as well because of that injury crisis, where he was the kind of the most experienced centre-back next to James Sands in terms of minutes played at home against Liverpool in that 7-1 defeat. How can it be that he plays all those minutes in the Champions League, and then this time next year, the player that was let go to open up that pathway for him, Leon Balogun, is re-signed? And we've made this point before, and that's not a slight individually at Balogun, because he was probably Rangers' best defender last season, and it's not his fault that this kind of pathway hasn't existed. That's why players won't be able to break into the first team beyond quality and whether they are good enough. Do I think Leon King's going to be Rangers number 6 long term? No. But equally, if you look at the backstory of the Leon Balogun being allowed to leave the club on a free at the end of summer of 2022, to then create that pathway for Leon King to play minutes, but yet in the summer of 2023, Leon Balogun, who's a year older, and Leon King, who's a year older, comes back to play those minutes after Leon King suffered an injury in pre-season. So that's the root of the issue for me. King's obviously played at right back as well, kind of filled in because that role's different to the one that was played under Beale. Again, it comes back to the consistency, though, and the pathway that young players need to break into a first team and do it consistently, and that's just not existed at Rangers for the last few years.
Yeah, we haven't really seen given a consistent run of matches, Leon King. But yeah, I thought that was an interesting email defensive midfield for Scotland the other night. A few interesting points coming in. Blue Ranger, I don't think this has been confirmed yet either. Do we have a new official vice captain, of course, with Goldson leaving? I don't think Rangers do. I know Jack Butland's had the armband for a game in pre-season. John Suter had the armband for a game as well. Joshua, I'd imagine it'd be one of those two.
Yeah, I don't think it's been made. That announcement has been made officially, but Butland is the clear. Even if you look at the fact that he was the one who came out after the most recent Old Firm game, wasn't he, and spoke to the media, he is the clear, I guess, player in that mould that the comment highlights, and has been very much someone who's taken a leadership position since he came to the club last summer. But I don't think there's been an official announcement on that. As you say, though, Derek, that one of the topics that Clement raised about Tavernier is he cannot go and play 50, 60 games a season or 40, 50 games, but he has started every game so far. So we've not been in a situation apart from pre-season where someone else has had to take the armband.
And this from Maka. It says, I'd read the piece on the Rangers Review that it's a concern that Coppin couldn't move on. Lowry, King and Devine hardly likely to get any game time. Lowry and King, of course, linked with moves down south and never materialised. Devine also, I think, free to go, but all three are still Rangers players. We just touched on King there. Lowry and Devine, I know Lowry's been on the bench at points. Joshua, Devine, I can't really see him getting an opportunity. Lowry, for you, is he likely to push in and get a game? I think with the signing of Bajrami, that pushes him further down the pecking order.
Yeah, and similarly, I think the change in style of play probably doesn't help him tons. The fact that if you look at how many number 10s Rangers had this time last year, but also they had like 3 positions you could make. You could maybe play in one of the 2 number 10s at the front. You could maybe play as a more attacking midfielder. Now you're very much either a winger, or you're a deep line number 6, or you're a running number 8, which I don't think Lowry is, or you're an out-and-out number 10. We saw him away at Birmingham most recently, I think, in that friendly game. Obviously, was involved.
He never took his chance. He was poor, but he wasn't the only one.
Again, I think Lowry and Devine, now players' own individual autonomy applies to this as well. They need to go and take opportunities, as you say, but very similar to the point I won't repeat about Leon King. Adam Devine, when Michael Beale first came in, Devine had that opportunity away at Ross County and at home to Hibs at left back and did well. But 2 years on, he's not really in the conversation and hasn't really played. Does the fact that the fullback role has changed come into that conversation? Probably somewhat, but Lowry in particular, he needs to go play games. I think that's the most obvious point to make on it. Is consistent game time going to arrive under Clement? Is it going to arrive at Rangers? It hasn't done so far since he really made that breakthrough, and he's obviously had difficulties as well off the pitch. He's had a couple of injury issues. He had that really bad injury issue in the B team, but he's clearly not going to develop at this age playing B team football, Derek, especially the setup that Rangers have at the moment. So again, the conversation is, okay, well, what is he now, 21, Lowry? He's a year older than Jeffy, who's still 20 years old, needs to go and play football. I think that's the most obvious thing to say about his career at this stage, but that becomes difficult because the transfer window is closed and it's still involved. But is he going to get in ahead of Bijrami or other players in that position?
No, he's not.
But he's a player. He's a player with so much quality. Maybe there's some concerns about. There's been concerns in the past about, does he have the intensity off the ball? Is he going to be able to do that in a system like Clement's? But he's a player who has a lot of quality. It just hasn't quite worked out, and I think clearly at this age needs to go and play football, doesn't he?
Yeah, another player that I think will be wanting to play more football is Bailey Rice. Paul McGregor with a point. Where is Bailey Rice? Also, he was an unused sub against Ross County. I know there was some that wanted him to get minutes in that game. I can understand why. He wasn't in the matchday squad against Celtic. He's another one, Joshua. I mean, he came that big, hugely talented player through at Motherwell. He's came to Rangers. He came on. Michael Beale gave him his debut against Livingston, wasn't it? The Tony Macaroni Arena. He came on, but it's just sort of flitted in and out of squads, really. But I haven't really seen much of him.
He was a player Beale really liked because he brought him on in Real Betis at home, didn't he, for the final 10 minutes of that game? I think in a 1-0 win. Someone can tell me if I'm wrong. Again, I don't think the change in style will have helped him a lot. If you look at the structure of Rangers midfield now compared to what it was, the type of players that Clement wants, I think in those 2 deeper positions, a lot of that comes down to the ground they can cover off the ball. For example, Connor Barron, I think the predominant things that stood out about his game so far is just how much area he is able to cover off the ball. But Rice is an interesting comparison and something to look into at a different point of the podcast, a piece on the website. If you compare him to maybe someone like Lennon Miller, who has stayed and played a lot of games and has had that opportunity, I think we're such a bad habit in Scotland of thinking that a young player is young until they're 23, until the point when they clearly have quality and are ready. Now, Rice, from what we've seen in the first team so far, doesn't look like a player who's overawed, can take responsibility on the ball, has a lovely left foot and a really nice range of passing. And that number 6 position, especially because of the dearth of, I guess, just options that Rangers have in that situation. It is interesting that Clement didn't add Rice to the Raskin and Sterling and Barron when he was asked about it recently, because while Rice isn't he's still 17, he's not on a rush. It's not as if he's 21, 22 and he needs to go and play games now. Again, I think there's a question there with the B team setup and how many games are being played competitively. And you compare it to someone like Lennon Miller, who is going and playing games in Scottish Premiership at the age of 17. Where is the best place for him to play football? And I would argue at this stage it's playing games somewhere. If that's not Rangers yet, then I don't think he should be kicking about the B team for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen him being sent out on loan. If he's not going to get much of a look in it this season, then I'd like to see him. It would aid his development tenfold if he was playing regular football somewhere else. Someone asked what age is he? He's 18 in October. Okay. So, that is Bailey Rice. Lennon Miller just turned 18 last month. So, similar ages there, but is a good comparison. He's another player I think Rangers I would have loved to have seen sign in the summer window. But he's a player I'm sure that will make Motherwell a lot of money. Right, that'll do us there. Thank you to Joshua as ever. Just a reminder, if you want to read that brilliant piece on Kasanwirjo, the link is below this video, so do go and check it out. And thank you to you all for tuning in to the show as ever. Just those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, I was in the hosting chair for the Q&A yesterday, so you can go and check that out. Some other videos coming your way this week. Of course, we'll have the press conference reaction video on Friday, and we'll try and get one or two more videos lined up as well. So, thanks again, and we'll speak to you tomorrow. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Bye for now.